Welcome to the Infinite Jungle. On today's show, I'm going to be talking about all core developers execution call number 194. There weren't a ton of updates shared on the call, but there was a proposal for Enshrined Proposer Builder Separation, ePBS, that was formally introduced on the call that I'd like to go into. I want to really explain in detail the motivation for something like ePBS, this EIP, because it will be a topic of discussion, I am sure, for future developer calls. As always, before we start with the show, here is a quick show disclaimer. I need to remind you to please refer to the disclaimer linked in the podcast show notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice, an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Now, before I get into EIP7732, I want to share a few of the updates from the call. As always, you can get the full show summary by clicking on the write-up in the show, linked in the show notes. At a very high level, developers, of course, talked about progress on Pectra. DevNet 2 remains stable. Developers have been debugging on that DevNet for the past few weeks, and developers are aiming now to try and launch DevNet 3 with updated specifications for EIP 7702 in the next 2 weeks. Developers, if all goes according to plan, will add in EOF to the Pectra DevNet starting from DevNet 4, so the DevNet thereafter, maybe in, say, like 4 or 5 weeks' time. Developers on the call also talked about minor changes to the execution API and the wire protocol. These are additional parts of the Ethereum protocol. I mean, the wire protocol is the protocol that dictates the networking layer of Ethereum, and the execution API is the API, of course, for the execution layer of Ethereum. That's actually a very bad explanation. But the layer of Ethereum that executes smart contracts and user transactions. And there's still fields and different methods in these two protocols that is no longer useful for Ethereum because those fields are no longer useful for the proof of stake version of Ethereum. These fields were created for Ethereum when Ethereum was proof of work. For example, there's fields related to the difficulty bomb of Ethereum. The difficulty bomb was a mechanism that tried to force developers to make the transition to proof of stake by making block times increasingly longer and longer, such that the mining difficulty of Ethereum just continued to go higher and higher exponentially, and then it would make the proof of work version of Ethereum completely obsolete. So that was a difficulty bomb. It was kind of a forcing mechanism because once it went off on Ethereum, developers were like, we either have to push back the difficulty bomb or we need to, make the transition to proof of stake and get off the proof of work consensus protocol. There was many a time when developers, during their journey to getting the proof of stake consensus protocol ready, when they said, why don't we just get rid of the difficulty bomb? But anyways, there's fields related to the difficulty bomb that obviously are no longer useful anymore in the Ethereum protocol because Ethereum is now a proof of stake protocol. And so developers talked about ways to deprecate some of those fields in a safe manner that doesn't impact end users all that much. They also talked about ways to rebase the PeerDAS code changes on top of Pectra EIPs. As we've explained on prior episodes, PeerDAS is this major overhaul to Ethereum's networking layer that will hopefully be able to motivate an increase in the blob gas limit on Ethereum, make Ethereum able to process a higher number of blobs, improve Ethereum's data availability capacity, and in doing so, by basically being able to change how validators, how these nodes on Ethereum are sampling different parts of blobs, different parts of the data from layer 2 rollups. This is PeerDAS, and PeerDAS is a change that was included into Pectra, I would say, later in the Pectra scoping process than the other Pectra EIPs. And instead of trying to debug PeerDAS and all of the Pectra EIPs all at once, developers are developing these two in parallel. So there's the core Pectra EIPs, and then there's PeerDAS. And PeerDAS has been was being developed, and continues, I believe, to be developed on top of a state of Ethereum since the Deneb upgrade. That was the most recent upgrade on Ethereum. These Pectra EIPs, of course, are developed on top of Deneb as well, but eventually you're going to have to merge the Pectra EIPs and PeerDAS together. So developers on the latest call talked about how to go about doing that and expediting the process of rebasing the PeerDAS work that's happening, not on top of Deneb, but on the core Pectra EIPs, especially as the Pectra EIPs are starting to stabilize, and developers are further along in their testing process for the Pectra EIPs. And finally, as per usual on these ACDE calls nowadays, especially since developers agreed to try and work towards history expiry and Pectra EIP 4844, since they agreed to put EIP 444, the four fours, into the Pectra upgrade, they have been starting to end off all these ACDE calls with an update on EIP 44's progress. Unfortunately, for the past, I would say, few calls, I think ever since developers did kind of initiate this process where they like start off the ACDE calls with an update on Pectra testing, on Pectra process, and they end off with updates and a check-in about 4.4s. There really hasn't been that much material updates on progress. There's client teams like Nethermind and I believe, was it Besu on this call? A couple of execution layer teams had shared, we're working on it. It's on our roadmap. They're working on their integrations with the Portal network, which is supposed to be this alternative peer-to-peer network that nodes can use to download data that's been expired from the Ethereum protocol. That integration work is still ongoing. So no major updates on EIP 4444, which is not surprising there because that's been the case for the last couple of calls for ACDE. The other very interesting part of the call that I want to spend the majority of today's episode talking about is EIP 7732. As you can tell, there really weren't that many updates shared on the call. And as I've kind of said this before on other episodes, not every ACD call can be an eventful one. So when there isn't an eventful meeting, I suppose I will try and take these opportunities to go more in depth on just one topic that was shared on the call. And the topic that I'd like to talk with you, my listeners, about on today's episode is enshrined PBS, enshrined proposer builder separation. So this EIP is the first EIP that has been created to formally try and get ePBS into a hard fork on Ethereum. It was introduced for the first time on the ACD call. The EIP was created and drafted, I think, a couple months ago. I did a short Twitter thread on that EIP. It had, sparked discussion. And on the latest call, the Prism developer by the pseudonym POTUS, he talked about EIP and the updates to it that have been made since then and gave a little bit of a refresher on why ePBS is important to the Ethereum protocol. And what EIP 7732 essentially does is it allows validators on Ethereum to directly connect to third-party block builders. We have talked, and this all relates to a much broader topic, which is the topic of MEV, maximal extractable value. And because there really wasn't that much to get into in terms of the call, I want to start from the very beginning when it comes to explaining the EIP, starting with the problem of MEV. What is MEV, maximal extractable value? It's additional rewards that validators can earn by proposing a block through the reordering of user transactions, or I should say, ordering in a very specific way of user transactions. As you know, or as I hope you know, for Ethereum transactions, there are additional fees that miners or validators, block proposers, I should say. So miners, when Ethereum was proof of work, validators, now that Ethereum is proof of stake. But both of these actors, they propose blocks. They are the ones that progress the blockchain and finalize new transactions onto Ethereum. This distributed ledger that anybody can see and anybody can read. So you have these block proposers, and they are able to earn additional rewards, partially through these are the three ways that these block proposers can earn rewards. Number one, of course, is just by the activity of proposing a block, just by the activity of progressing the blockchain. The network itself offers a reward. This is the issuance. It's the new amount of ETH that's put into circulation. There's also rewards that these block proposers can earn by including transactions into a block. So you already get kind of a base amount of rewards just for progressing the blockchain and adding a new block. But if you stuff that block with transactions, these transactions generally have a fee associated with them that validators will earn. Since since the London upgrade, the part of the fee that validators earn shrunk, went down a bit because now you have the base fee. The fee is split up into two parts: base fee and priority fee. But anyways, I won't get into that right now. And normally you would think, well, if these block proposers want to maximize how much rewards they're earning, they would of course choose the transactions with the highest fees. So they get that baseline amount of block rewards, and then on top of that they get the transaction fees. Now, some of these transactions will have extremely high fees because, number one, users may attach these high fees to a transaction because they really want to get it into the next block. There's this timing, this priority, this, I really got to get this ETH over to this address very quickly. My friend who wants ETH just really wants it very bad. So you can have very high fees related to timing, but you can also have high fees because there are these specialized actors on Ethereum, searchers that we call them, that identify opportunities where they can make money off of user transactions. All of the transactions before they're included in a block are sent to the mempool, which is this this waiting room for transactions. This prevents kind of the network from being overrun with too many transactions, especially if you had just all the transactions that were being submitted to Ethereum, especially if there's too many then can fit into a block that exceeds the gas limit of the block. You can potentially see the network being overwhelmed. So there is this kind of holding area for Ethereum transactions called the mempool, and it's public. And searchers notice that there are certain transactions that are usually related to some kind of a financial activity. There is a drop of a new NFT, a new type of non-fungible token that there's a limited supply of, and users are all trying to claim it. So these searchers identify opportunities where they can, say, front run trades, back run trades, sandwich trades. They can get ahead of other users in terms of getting access to that NFT, or they identify a lucrative opportunity where they can create additional value. Some of this value, of course, is good and healthy for the ecosystem and for the financial markets that are built on top of Ethereum, the decentralized finance ecosystem, because they could be activities that make the markets more efficient, such as arbitrage, but they could definitely be taking advantage of user transactions by, artificially inflating the price of a certain asset that a user wants to buy and making money off of the difference. So this is what MEV is, and this is also why at times in Ethereum's history, it has also driven fees on Ethereum, transaction fees on Ethereum has made it extremely high. And of course, the searchers are trying to get their transactions into a block as soon as possible, because these opportunities for MEV are very time sensitive. It's not like the trade that that searchers are wanting to front run is going to be in the mempool for an indefinite period of time. These trades are coming and going in the mempool pretty rapidly. So that is what MEV is. And the main concern around MEV, of course, is that if some of these rewards, these searchers can essentially bribe validators and say, look, I'll give you a share of the rewards, either by attaching it as a pretty high priority fee. So validators will be more incentivized to take that fee and include the searcher's transaction in a block. They can do it in that way, or they can use some out of protocol or out of band way to connect directly to a block proposer. And the concern is that as more value can be extracted by these searchers and more value can be extracted from user transactions, these MEV rewards could lead to centralization of block proposers. If there are certain block proposers that are earning these rewards, earning MEV and having special relationships with searchers, or even themselves kind of investing the capital and the resources to be able to identify MEV opportunities, then you can see a pretty negative outcome where certain block proposers are earning more rewards than others through MEV. And if these proposers are earning more MEV, they potentially have the ability to gain greater profits, perhaps be able to invest more into the resources that they have to operate, beat out other operators in terms of either having more computational resources to be able to mine more blocks on Ethereum in the case of proof of work, but in the case of proof of stake, perhaps create more validators, stake more value on Ethereum. So that's one. I think that's probably the main concern that people have talked about a lot when it comes to MEV, the centralizing effects of MEV. And as I kind of mentioned, there's also the concern around a higher number of failed transactions and high priority fees. So, of course, centralization is a pretty big concern when it comes to MEV. And as I was talking about and kind of hinting at, there's also the problem of failed transactions and a high number of priority fees. Because there's a limited amount of MEV opportunities in the mempool, these searchers are, the higher the competition among searchers, the higher the number of transactions trying to take advantage of a single MEV opportunity. And there's only one of those transactions by the searcher that's ultimately going to make it into the block. Because it's not like you're going to be able to front run the same transaction, 4 or 5 different times. The MEV gets extracted depending on whichever the first transaction is to be able to get that lucrative opportunity and get it into a block. And the activity around searchers, they have a higher appetite to be able to attach higher values to these transactions because they're very time sensitive. These opportunities are time sensitive, and searchers recognize I can make, an X amount of money from getting my transaction into a block immediately. Whereas for regular users, if I'm trying to interact with a decentralized finance application or, say, a game, my time preference may not be that high. And so for all of these reasons, when Ethereum was a proof of work blockchain, there was an off-chain, out of protocol market, MEV Geth, where searchers were able to more efficiently connect to miners and be able to identify these lucrative transaction bundles, be able to identify a transaction in the mempool, say I'd like to insert this transaction ahead of it and this transaction after it, send over that transaction bundle with a particular value attached to that bundle to the miner. This was MEV Geth, and it was extremely popular. It allowed miners to be able to more easily be able to identify, easily be able to earn MEV and share a cut of that MEV profits from searcher. This was MEV Geth, and it did, of course, illuminate all of this MEV activity that before MEV Geth was happening in a lot more discrete ways. It was happening directly on chain through fees, and it wasn't clear what what kinds of relationships that searchers were out of protocol ways that searchers were trying to connect with miners. And so MEV Geth kind of concentrated, allowed one place for searchers to be able to submit their transaction bundles, and for one place for miners to be able to receive those bundles. And the idea was that any miner could be able to connect to that pool. So in that way, the rewards for MEV could be more distributed. And because all of that bidding and auctioning was happening with transaction bundles in MEV Geth through MEV Geth, it wasn't happening on chain, which meant that there wasn't these extremely large transactions, these transactions with very large fees attached to them, and there wasn't as much, the failure rate for transactions wasn't as high. So that's essentially MEV Geth. And we're going to talk a little bit about what happened with the introduction of validators once proof of stake came onto the scene. But before we do that, I wanted to just highlight a few criticisms around this narrative, around what I just talked about the problem of MEV. There is a great episode that I did with Uri Klarman. He's a pretty a strong he has pretty strong criticisms around this narrative, because from his research, he argues that the additional rewards that block proposers have been able to earn from MEV is not so high that the outcome of centralization would have been a given, or at least would have happened in as quick of a timeline. If MEV the extraction of MEV and the amount of MEV able to be rewarded to validators, if there wasn't MEV gap, if there wasn't that kind of market created, he argues that the kind of centralizing effects of MEV could have happened a lot slower, and the additional rewards that these miners and block proposers that they can earn, it's not a given that just because you can create more additional value and you can earn more additional value that these proposers would, especially if that proposer is a regulated entity, which more proposers are now under proof of stake than proof of work. And he also explains how the MEV Geth market and what we'll talk about soon with MEV Boost actually made the extraction of MEV a lot more efficient, and just made MEV a much larger problem than it was when there wasn't these kind of out of protocol markets. And he also talks about how the problem of spam and failed transactions and high priority fees is actually something that the Ethereum protocol recovers quite well from through the dynamic priority and base fees on Ethereum. So there is quite a bit of pushback to this idea of, would MEV have really been as big of a problem if it hadn't been moved to an off-chain market? At the very least, by doing this, by the off-chain market, MEV Geth was initially developed by Flashbot's team. At the very least, Flashbots as an organization and through the products that they built did shed a ton more light on the problem of MEV, on even what it is and how it works. They kind of defined the game for MEV by building these products, and they definitely did increase transparency, ways in which to track the amount of MEV that's actually being extracted by searchers and earned by validators, all because it's happening and it's all centralized into this one market, MEV Geth. Whereas before, it was a little bit harder to understand what the heck was going on because it was all happening directly through the protocol of Ethereum. And that was a lot more inefficient for the MEV markets. But I should transition now because, we've already blown through probably half of this episode. I want to talk a little bit about what happened on the merge when Ethereum transitioned to proof of stake. When the merge upgrade happened and leading up to the merge upgrade, developers needed to figure out a different way in which block proposers, which are now validators instead of miners, could extract MEV in a decentralized and distributed way. The concern, of course, again, is that if there isn't a market MEV geth off chain, then validators themselves will create specialized techniques to be able to search for lucrative transactions, perhaps use out of protocol ways in which to earn MEV themselves. Perhaps certain validators gain a bigger advantage for earning MEV than others. And so, in order to kind of allow all validators on Ethereum, all block proposers to be able to get a cut of the MEV rewards and make it so that validators, no one validator has a higher ability to be able to earn MEV than others. The idea was to take away the activity of block building from validators, to say, you know what, validators, you are going to remain these very stupid entities that don't know anything about creating a valuable block. And there will be these other very specialized actors called block builders that you can outsource that responsibility to. And block builders will have, the they'll be the ones to have the specialized skills and the capital to be able to search for these opportunities, create the most valuable block, and they will send it to the validator through an off-chain marketplace. These intermediary actors are relays. And these relays are these trusted entities that take the blocks from block builders that, of course, contain very lucrative transactions. And you don't want that kind of information leaking before those transactions are actually executed on chain. Because if so, then you can have this potential where other searchers or even the relay operator themselves front runs all of those transactions and takes the MEV for themselves. So relays are these trusted actors that promise to take those blocks and not reveal them and send them off to the next validator. And validators on Ethereum all connect to relays through MEV Boost. MEV Boost is the software that allows validators to connect to multiple relays. And validators essentially they really do not do much. They really just look at the value of the block. And if it's high enough, they say, great, additional rewards, additional MEV rewards where I didn't have to do the work to even create the block. Like, please just give me this package and I'll propose it to the network and earn rewards. So that's MEV Boost. And that's what happened. That was the new system for earning MEV once Ethereum became a proof of stake blockchain. And the activity of block building was outsourced. And this is what we call proposer-builder separation. The block building is separate from the proposer, the person that proposes the block. And as I mentioned, there are these intermediary actors that sit in between the builder and the proposer. And if you're wondering, oh, where did the searcher go in all of this? Well, the searchers are still working hand in hand with the builders. Searchers are submitting their own bundles of transaction to builders, or even builders themselves are searching for lucrative transactions. So the builder and the searcher market have become more sophisticated, have become more professionalized. So you can think of the builder and searchers, I would say, as almost in the same boat. Builders are the ones that ultimately propose the full fleshed out blocks, but the activity of searching and trying to find these lucrative transaction bundles definitely still happens. And there are certain actors that are strictly searchers and connect to builders, but I would say that most builders also do their own searching. So what is EIP 7732? I promise now I'm getting to the end of this very long, drawn out explanation. What developers are trying to do through Enshrined PBS, which EIP 7732 is all about. ePBS removes the need for relays, those trusted intermediaries that sit in between validators and builders, so that validators can earn MEV in a more trustless manner. And the idea is that if you have more intermediaries in between validators and builders, like the relays, there is more centralized points of failure. There is not a large network of relays. It's pretty much a public good being able to run this kind of technology, this kind of software and hardware. Matt Cutler, who I've also had on this podcast before, his company used to run a relay. I don't think they do anymore, but he's spoken a ton on the non-profitability, the lack of profitability when it comes to operating a relay. And it's true. Relays are not the the most lucrative source of income, because for builders, when they have these valuable blocks, they take a cut of the profits, and so does the validator. But the relay in between does not charge a fee. I mean, some relays do, but because there are relays operated by entities that don't charge a fee, it's very hard to be competitive as a fee charging relay. And it is a bit of a race to the bottom when it comes to that kind of market dynamic. So if there's a failure in a relay, then you could see the potential where a validator does not receive a block in time to propose on Ethereum. So relays, instead of having validators rely on these relays, the idea is to have the protocol itself enforce rules to allow builders to safely give their blocks directly to a validator. And this does reduce risk when it comes to builders trying to earn MEV and validators also trying to earn MEV, because essentially validators and builders both have to trust in the relay. But if you remove the relay and you enable the protocol to be able to enforce a certain type of behavior so that builders can give their blocks, they essentially do this by staking a certain amount of value to the chain. So, in the case of any malicious behavior, the builder would get slashed. And the validator themselves, all of the validators are already staked. They've got 32 ETH on the network. So being able to enforce kind of additional rules around the way that validators handle these blocks, all you have to do is kind of change, and update rules around slashing for validators, and then you allow the builder to stake onto Ethereum. And then you can also enforce slashing penalties on builders to keep them honest. So now you have this way in which you can economically, through the protocol, enforce trustless behavior and allow validators to connect to builders. So that's ePBS. I'm going to stop saying that sentence repeatedly now. And it was proposed on the Ethereum dev call, the latest Ethereum dev call. And one of the concerns already that I think I see with the CIP is that it essentially enshrines this idea. It essentially enshrines the MEV markets into Ethereum. It makes MEV an in protocol market almost. It would all that bidding and auctioning would still happen separate from the auctioning and the bidding of user transactions. But it makes the MEV markets even more, I would say, efficient, because it removes risk, it removes that intermediary. So I think it further assists the activity of extracting MEV from user transactions. Some of the quick things that POTUS was highlighting about the EIP, and I will just mention very quickly also that yes, it makes the MEV markets more efficient, but the whole idea of it is that it removes an intermediary from the Ethereum protocol and allows more trustless behavior from validators. So those are kind of the pros and cons, I would say. I'm sure there's others, but those are the two big ones in my mind. On the one hand, it makes the extraction of MEV more efficient. On the other hand, it does take away the need to rely on a trusted entity for validators when they're extracting MEV. So POTUS highlighted a couple things about the design. He shared that, the CIP doesn't require any changes to the execution layer protocol or the engine API. However, it does require some pretty complex changes, involved changes on the consensus layer side, especially related to validators and builder staking. He also added that EIP 7732 is very compatible with inclusion lists, which is another proposal that we've talked about before on the show that is supposed to enhance Ethereum censorship resistance. So very similarly, there are certain relays that censor transactions from being proposed on Ethereum. They'll censor blocks that contain OFAC sanctioned addresses. And so by removing relays, you're removing a certain type of censoring activity that's happening on chain. And inclusion lists is a different proposal to further be able to enforce and improve Ethereum censorship resistance capabilities. Of course, once you remove the relays, the next obvious question is, well, what happens to the builders? We didn't really talk about the centralization problem as it relates to builders, but similarly to relays, the specialized activity that happens with builders and the reliance of validators on builders for blocks. Builders themselves have the ability to censor transactions from blocks. Builders themselves are not as decentralized and as distributed as validators are. So there's more work that needs to be done in order to figure out ways to decentralize the builder market and increase the number of competitive builders there are on Ethereum. In terms of timing for EIP 7732, of course, that is very TBD right now. There is absolutely no chance, I would say, of it going into the next upgrade because it's so complex and there's still a lot of research going into this. But I think depending on how conversations related to Verkle shakes out, we could see EIP 7732 be prioritized for the next upgrade after Pectra. Of course, developers have been talking about how Verkle should be front and center, but I think as developers have been working on Pectra, that is not a given. That's not as certain, I think, anymore. And so one of the things to be watching out for will be to see the likelihood of EIP 7732 being in the next upgrade ahead of Verkle. That's not for sure, but I would say it's not a possibility that people should rule out. And I think there is a possibility that EIP 7732, a good possibility that EIP 7732 could be featured in the next upgrade after Pectra. But we'll have to stay tuned for that. And I didn't go too much into the technical details around the EIP 7732 implementation. But if you'd like to find out more about that, I'm going to link POTUS's Google slide presentation into today's show notes. So that's what you need to know about EIP 7732 and its motivation. A few things that I'm watching out for in the next ACDE call is DevNet 3 readiness, how ready developers are to actually meet the timeline to be able to launch DevNet 3 in 2 weeks' time. And of course, any updates on PeerDAS progress, especially as it relates to moving forward with the rebasing of PeerDAS on top of Pectra EIPs. So thank you again for listening in on today's Infinite Jungle show. I want to make a quick shout out for all of my listeners that have been listening to the show. Thank you so much for joining me every week. If you have feedback on the show, topics that you'd like to see covered, parts of the show that you like or don't like, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment on the YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave a comment because I'd love to iterate on this show a little bit more and do so via feedback from my listeners. I am signing off from San Francisco today. I took a little bit of break from the concrete jungle, came to spend some time with family and touch grass on the West Coast. So I'm signing off from San Francisco today. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Until next time, in your explorations of the infinite jungle that is Ethereum, stay safe out there, everyone.